welcome everybody. And thank you for joining us this week. We've got production consultant, producer, George Nejame. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm going to just tell everybody, we actually had George here before and we screwed up the tech. So George has been cool enough to come back and share some of his stories with us. George, let me ask you to start off like we always do. How did you start off in the business? What was your bug into it?
It's a ridiculously long story. I was actually working professionally at the age of about 9 or 10 years old. I was put into dance school before I even knew it because I was severely pigeon-toed. So I owe everything to being pigeon-toed. Um, and I excelled. I excelled in the dance school. They put us into we were going upstate to a local station on a show called Talent Barn in Schenectady, New York, once a month, and they canceled the show, and so they decided to take that special class from this dance school and bring us down to New York for auditions. And the first thing we went down for was a play called Henry, Sweet Henry, and I nailed it. And so they picked me, and the rest was history. I became, it's not like I ever wanted to be in the industry. I've always felt comfortable because I was in it as young as 3 years old. When I was in New York, I did a lot of commercials. I did a lot of off Broadway. Henry was Broadway, but there was a lot of experience. I enjoyed the people. I enjoyed the time. I enjoyed when I was doing summer stock and all of that stuff. But I always had an affinity, as much as I'm going to say that stuff that was conditioned in me. My musical singing and acting was conditioned in me. I didn't really know what the hell I was doing. But I always had an affinity toward backstage. I was always looking at the sets. My mom even had the joke that when I was in kindergarten, I cried when I had to play one of the seven dwarves because I wanted to build the set. So, and I forgot, when I was in high school, I also helped build the sets, and I stayed backstage. I never performed in high school. I never had the urge to, but I did indeed help them build the sets, move the sets, never lighting though. Then, from community college, I went to college, and in college I went into pre-law. And within the first 3 months, the exact same story happened. They were doing Anything Goes, and they needed somebody to play Billy. And hair down to here. And they called me again, and I said, okay. And I went in, and again, he knew I could tap dance, and he asked me if I could help choreograph, if I could, teach college students how to tap. And I said, sure. And so that was that. And through that, I got to know a theater department, and anybody who's done black box theater, anybody who's done college theater, those are friends of yours for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
I just saw John Jackson, who's a very good friend of mine, and I probably in the last 3 months have seen 5 or 6 people that I actually went to college with. And then in college, I really got involved backstage. I was directing, I was producing, I was acting, but I was really digging the producing and the directing. Everybody went to LA,
Uh-huh.
so I went to LA and I was trying to be an actor, driving a cab,
Okay.
working the phones, doing whatever I could possibly do to make money. Lived with a bunch of guys in the Hollywood Hills. That's a story for another podcast. Um, and then one of the guys I lived with, so I did okay acting. I was all right. I've got some fairly decent credits,
Yeah.
but
Didn't you do like designing women,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Melrose Place,
yeah,
Days of Our Lives,
yeah. Um, General Hospital,
General
the
Hospital?
Matlock.
Matlock. That's the one. That's the one I
Yeah,
love.
yeah.
Matlock.
Yeah, I still get
Nice.
people who are watching reruns and will call me and say, there's a guy that looks just like you. Yeah. Cause not a lot of people know, but when I get into conversations, it's a great conversation, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I'm living in the house, acting here and there, I did a couple of commercials. I did a McDonald's commercial, Kodak commercial, things like that. And one of the guys in the house was a real, he's, he never really amounted to much, but he was a great guy. And he found a studio called the Production Group in Hollywood. It only closed about 7, 8 years ago, but it was a very small studio, and a new team had taken it over. And so he brought me down just to labor. And I found myself um, hand drawing new floor plans with room numbers, changing room numbers, making it organized, getting all the organizing all of the lighting, which is when I learned how which is when I learned the difference between a 5K and a 2K. And I ended up kind of like every show that came in, I was more or less the staging supervisor. And at the same time, I would call myself, without exaggerating, the assistant general manager. I took care of a lot of business. I had all my actor friends, all my cab friends working for me in one way or another. And that's what led to, I would say, my best, my, the most success I've had, because the most success I've had is in studios in a good
Nice.
way. Then,
When did you transition over towards producing?
um, pure luck,
Okay.
absolutely luck. Yeah. I mean, when I talk to the kids, when I talk to people who I mentor, because I work with my alumni association, I don't tell them how it happened to me. You know what? Knock on wood, I was in the right place at the right time. In 97, 96, the very first time Whose Line Is It Anyway came to Los Angeles, I was very helpful to them. I helped the English, Clive, I don't remember Clive's last name. They did one episode with Clive at Hollywood Center, where I was the unit manager, and then they did the first season with Drew there, and I was their unit manager. Now, they were very used to the BBC in England, and the BBC supplies everything. The BBC crews it, the BBC supplies all the equipment, et cetera, et cetera. It's a real broadcast center, very similar to the way CBS used to be. So they didn't have a crew. They didn't have a roster. They didn't have a lighting company. They didn't have any of that stuff. And I helped them. I was doing that kind of stuff. And then in 95, the guy I used to work for brought me in to help Tribune take over one stage at Hollywood Center, the KTLA lot. And that, we were doing only Tribune projects. And with all due respect to Tribune, they weren't a content creator. While everybody else is doing 4 game shows presentation and 5 talk shows and really experimenting, we're doing one. But because of my experience, I was not only the production executive, but I was also the line producer. Um, I
Sweet.
helped, I helped them. I was production executive on Soul Train, and I know all of the Soul Train, and then all of the Soul Train award shows, which was a lot of fun. I was also production executive on Geraldo, Charles Perez.
Wow.
Um, yeah, yeah. So that's what happened there, and I was with them for um, I'm going to say 16 years. And
Wow.
after the first 5 years, we ended up going from one stage at Hollywood Center, KTLA, to taking over all stages. We were doing
Nice.
our own product, and it wasn't going anywhere, and the writing was on the wall. And so we had 2 stages. Well, one stage that had the wall was taken down. We had about 15,000 square feet. And we were doing, in the beginning, we did a lot. Then we were doing so little, and those stages were empty. And I really thought, this is not good. So I went to management and said, hey, how about I bring in somebody? How about I go out and see if I can't get somebody to rent the other half of the stage? And they said, sure. And I went out, and believe it or not, it's better to be lucky than it is to be good. The
We all
very
know
first,
that.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. The very first long-term show I got was to come in was a little show called Judge Judy.
Oh.
I know. It's which led to Judge Joe, which led to Candid Camera.
But
And I
of all
had,
the judges, like of all the judge shows, with the exception of the original People's Court, like that Judge Wapner, Judge Judy is the only one that looked like she would be at least remotely fun to work with.
um, I would say that you could put Judge Judy in front of a Seamless and just have a question and answer, and it would be compelling. And she is exactly that. She's a very, very nice woman.
Yeah, that's what she
Yeah,
comes across as. That's why I
yeah,
think she became so popular with all of the shows that you could choose from, especially then with the judge shows and different things like that. The reason why is like she always came across as like, oh yeah, I'd have a beer with her.
yeah, yeah. I would mention the production executive that I made the deal with, but the deal was made in a strip club in Vegas. Oh no, it was made in a strip club in Vancouver. Yeah, it was. Those were the days. We had scotch in our office, had an ashtray. It
It
was
was
very
all.
nice.
I remember I've had a couple of those old day production offices where I'd go in and it was like, man, they're drinking and it's 10 a.m. right
Yeah, yeah,
now.
yeah. I had the scotch in my office, but it was only for looks. I never, I just did. I wasn't a big drinker, never have been. Yeah,
There was a gentleman I worked with at a network. Again, I won't name names, but he used to say, "Oh yeah, this is all for show," and it was like you just see it all going down by the hour, and
yeah,
you're
yeah,
like, "I
yeah.
love that show."
I think
But
that's yeah,
what? Here's a question though. You brought up Judge Judy, but you brought up somebody else earlier. You brought up Geraldo.
yeah.
Somebody like Geraldo, he's very specific. Like he's an entity unto himself. He's a character unto himself. So even doing a show with him, that seems to me like he would have a lot of say in that show because of who he is and what he's doing. How difficult or how easy for you is that to handle when creating content?
It's interesting you bring that up. Did I tell you last time about the Geraldo story?
No, actually, I've never heard the Geraldo story, and like this is the first time I heard, and I was like, this is different than before, so it's why I went back to it.
So Geraldo, I met Geraldo because the executive in charge of production, glorified line producer, a man by the name of Bill Reardon, didn't like to travel. So Geraldo went to Colorado for Joan Benet,
Okay.
Joan Benet Ramsey.
Yep.
And Bill was a friend of mine, and Bill said, George should do this. So I ended up executive in charge of Geraldo when they were in Colorado, and then also Cabrini Green. So I got to know Geraldo. He was I think he's brilliant.
Yeah.
I think he's actually brilliant.
Yeah.
And then the time came, and this is the story. The time came for me to go back to New York and cut Geraldo, make Geraldo cheaper. Simple as that. And I went back, and all of these people that I had known from the two locations, I found out PAs were making $2,500 to $3,000, a week. And this is late 90s. And that's because our industry is not built on a show that lasts for 12 years. It's just
Yeah.
not. So
Yeah.
they gave them normal raises. So I had to cut all of that out. And then I recognized, and I was watching them. I was there for a couple of weeks, and I was watching how they shot. And everything was live. Everything was live to tape to the bird after pull-ups. So if they shot the show at, I'm going to say 3:00, 4:00 in the afternoon, we had an hour before we got it to the bird, which I scheduled so that it would go to the bird and the local stations would get it. On Thursdays, we always had a problem. On Thursdays, for weeks before I went to New York, I was I would always have to buy extra satellite time because we never got delivery on time. So I started to watch what happened. Monday, we do the show Monday through Wednesday, because on Thursday we do two shows. Monday through Wednesday, we do the show. The AD, oh, I wish I remember his name because he was very good. And the director would sit in the booth, and Geraldo would come in and do the pull-ups. And Geraldo would say, how does that look? How does that look? Da, da, da. And the guys would say, yeah, we should look at it. Da, da, da. Long story short, he would do it, but he would do it within the hour. He would do it within the time frame that we needed. On Thursdays, he would come in, and it was a stretch. So the story was very simple, that I got to know the AD and I got to know the director, from the trips, and again, I'm a production executive. They're going to kowtow to me a little bit. So before the Thursday shooting, the Thursday taping, I said to the directors, listen, when he comes in and says, how is it? Your answer is nothing but it's fantastic. Tell him it's all good. We've got to get in. You can play with him for only 30 minutes. Anything more than that. And it's funny because Geraldo directed, produced, wrote. He really was. I mean, he was brilliant. He would walk into the booth on a Monday, Tuesday, even on a Thursday, and say, pull it up and he would almost give an exact time code as to where he wanted to fix something. So quite brilliant, but it was some of it was unnecessary. Some of it was a bit too much. So and then they ended up, I got back to LA and the Thursday deliveries were on time. And working
Nice.
with him was a delight.
Nice.
He's harsh.
Yeah.
Very harsh. Very tough man. But, I've always said, I've met quite a few.
Yeah.
And I've always said some of them have a right to be a bit of an asshole. There's a lot of pressure on them. And so I would give credit to a lot of them who get through it. He's not killing anybody, mind you. There are some people that I will not mention here, names that we all know, that just really, really bad guys and bad girls. Yeah,
we all hit those, but I find it. I always find that it's the great ones are the ones that are just so over the top nice, or the ones that you just can't. You'll never forget those interactions.
Yeah.
You just never forget. And so people always say like, "Oh, don't meet your heroes," but sometimes you meet them and you're just like, "That was awesome."
Yeah. I mean, Bob Hope's a good one, because I was at his house I was on an AFI film. I don't even remember what I was doing, but his daughter was doing an AFI film.
Okay.
And so we were at his house and he came in blazing and everybody was so afraid and so on and so forth, including me. But I didn't say, he was not polite in any way. And I felt so sorry for his daughter. But then I met him years later at the Desert Storm Parade. He was what do you call it at a parade? He was that guy. He was a
Grandmaster.
Grand Marshal. And I was babysitting him. I was basically, as a unit manager at KTLA, Hollywood Center, I was managing him. I was making sure I knew where he was at all times and so on and so forth. And he was an absolute delight. He was the nicest guy. He and his wife, Dolores.
Nice.
I think that's right. Yeah, they were very, very sweet. So again, it's all timing. We all can come home in a bad mood.
Oh, yeah. You can never judge somebody on that moment. Again, like you say, people just don't understand what every other department or every other person, and whether they be the talent, the producer, or anything, you just don't know what pressure they're under or what's going on. So just always keeping that.
It's interesting because I on Whose Line, those guys are stars.
Yeah.
And they all have their own personalities. And you know what? They're all as professional as I needed them to be.
Yeah.
And that was, and I mean, even, Wayne was a little bit distant in the first few years. And then when I don't know what happened. My joke was, and if Wayne sees this, he'll kill me. But my joke was, they adjusted his medication, because he turned into the best thing. He really, really, really turned into just a nice man. Really, really good to the crew, really good to everybody. Our producer on Whose Line, his company's called Angst. So to give you an idea of where he comes from. So he was very high maintenance, and the way he respected him and the way he handled him was really admirable. Very, very admirable.
I got lucky. I got to work with Mr. Brady and his family a couple of years back on the Wayne Brady Family Remix.
Yeah.
They were fantastic. Every one of them was as nice as pie to all of us. You know what? I got to ask you, because I love the show. How fun was it to work on Whose Line Is It Anyway? That's got to be one of those shows that you have to just enjoy going to work to.
Well, like I said, I hang out and stay in touch with all of my friends. I have friends from childhood that I still stay in touch with. And I go back to Poughkeepsie, New York, which is where I'm from, Often. I know.
Poughkeepsie was my first job ever.
No kidding.
Yeah, I was an actor in a B film with like mob hits in a pig farm in Poughkeepsie.
That's hilarious. That's that should be the opening of your biography.
Exactly.
Yeah. So where I was going was when I first did it, when I did the one episode with Clive and the first season with Drew,
Uh-huh.
you know, when I was in with my Arizona friends and my New York friends and my Florida friends that aren't in the industry, the number one question they would ask me is what's the favorite show you've ever worked on? And now this was in the late 90s, and I would always say, whose line is it anyway? And then I ended up getting the show and doing the show we've got 14 seasons. We've only been in the studio 9 times. And now I say that's my favorite show of all time. It's the only show that there's a couple of levels. One, when the English come over, they're very organized. And so I would get a month and a half, 2 months of prep so that when they came in, I would be able to present. The first couple of years, I tried to follow through. I tried to do more, and I realized they were fine as long as I was nearby and I handed them things and I handed them schedules and budgets and things like that. They took it from there. And after a while, I got very used to it. I was completely spoiled, completely spoiled. But you know, we did that. We always came in under budget, significantly under budget.
Nice.
They were always very happy with me. And again, they're shopping a show now called Mock the Week.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a pickup from Amazon, but that went south. And they again, that's another show that they would ask me to just run. And it's
Nice.
they're really the first couple of seasons, very tough with the angst-ridden showrunner, but his number one, whose name is Jed Leventhal, and I have become fast friends. And Jed basically taught me exactly how to deal with Dan Patterson. And Dan comes over when he pitches. He and I come over. We go out to dinner. We go out to comedy clubs. You know, he's always looking for talent. So
Nice.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
you seem to have that skill, though. You seem like you have the skill to be able to talk to anyone, which is more than just being a producer. You just seem to have that as a person.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know what I
yeah. I
mean? You
mean that.
really you
Thank
make
you,
people comfortable with that.
thank you. It's my family. My brothers were the same way. My older brother
Nice.
was the same way. My younger brother is the same way. Um, I I like people. I'm definitely what do they say? Extroverted extrovert. Yeah, yeah. My wife doesn't like it very much, but you know what?
Well, besides that skill, what do you think is the next important skill that you need to have to be a good producer?
Okay, okay. There's a lot of levels there. Um, I got there by being what glib, by being, but I always tell anybody I mentor, or anybody I talk to about getting into the industry, that talent in our industry will get you absolutely nowhere, but it will indeed keep you there if you find yourself in that spot. I've used that line
Right.
till I'm blue in the face.
Yeah.
It's your network. It is your network. The reason I got to be the producer of Whose Line Is It Anyway is because somebody remembered me from 15 years earlier and in conversation with somebody else, both not involved with Whose Line, had it mentioned. And then that person went to Jed Leventhal, who is the executive in charge for Angst, and said, you got to talk to this guy, George. So I'm going to say um, network, maintain that network, and have the ability when you get there, because what's producing other than organizing your garage? And I love to
Yeah.
organize my garage. It's not much more. You know, did you watch The Offer?
Watched it yet. I literally it's queued up for me. I just haven't had time, but it's the next one I'm about to watch.
I would tell anybody to watch it because you get a real good sense of what a producer does. You know, he doesn't, there's not, I mean, other than getting the budget and getting the picture greenlit, and other than that, all he does is he's a fixer. He fixes things. Oh, we lost that location. Oh, we don't have the money for this. Oh, that talent doesn't, that actor doesn't want to do the show. It really, I thought it was the best representation of a producer that I've ever seen. And it's a pretty silly program. I mean, it's well worth the watch, but it was
Nice.
pretty silly.
What advice would you give to people creating content today?
Well, my experience with the stages and the sales piece of my life these days is I'm noticing that most of the big producers, the Universals, NBC, um, Netflix, all of them, they use the same people. Um, and if you're not on that list, the only way to get in is by doing your own stuff. I'm in the middle of researching it right now because one of the things that we haven't discussed is I'm involved in building a couple of studios. Uh, I'm looking at a sales strategy, and I've recognized that content creators are no longer working for Netflix, no longer working for HBO, no longer working for. They're doing it themselves. And I think I don't have the capability of getting out there on YouTube and all of the different platforms that you can get out on, but somebody young and new that's creating content needs to get their stuff out. And there are so many different avenues on how to get your stuff out because, like I said, if it's good, it will get it'll get you return. If it's good, in my world, you can monetize it. But
Nice.
it's not being, I would say that we're almost to a point where more than 50% of the people who are credited with creating content are not working for anyone but themselves. It's not a
It's
pretty thing.
it's really hard right now here
Yeah.
in LA. I don't think a lot of people fully understand.
Sorry.
Yeah. Oh no.
I need a gaffer.
Uh, I again, what I worry about with LA is the lack of secondary industry to keep it going.
Yeah.
If the entertainment industry completely goes out, there's not a lot. Like California has a lot of other things, but LA itself doesn't really have. All the industry here is really dependent on that, and whether that's delivering toilets or anything like that, all of those jobs are really, cut away right now.
Well, I think it's actually more global than you even mentioned. I think
I agree.
yeah, jobs are going away
Yeah.
everywhere. They're just not, it's just corporate greed.
Oh,
Yeah. And
the
which
budgets
is a shame.
themselves. I noticed over the past I mean, it's always been the case. We shouldn't pretend to try to romanticize the past, but I can say realistically, the past 8 years, 9 years, the percentage that those budgets have gone down,
That's because
it's astronomical.
that's because the license fees have gone down.
Yeah, yeah,
And the CW, NBC, ABC, CBS aren't paying what they used to pay. I mean, when you see these numbers about MASH with 30 million people watched MASH, you know, there's maybe if you get an audience of 3 million people, that's about what you're getting now because
yeah. That's huge.
there's so many outlets, there's so many
Yeah.
places to see shit.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
That's where too. It's just trying to get, like as you said, if you're good, if it's a really good story, that's what's going to help you get it out. Because otherwise, you're swimming in a sea of a noise. You know
yeah.
what I mean? It's
And
just
what about
all out
AI?
there.
Now all of a sudden, some of them are going to start depending on AI to make their stories.
I started watching those. I saw a couple on YouTube, like the Bigfoot vlogs and stuff like
Hmm.
that, where the YouTubes are really, there's a talking Bigfoot going through stealing drugs from tents. And not necessarily my form of entertainment, but I'm like, oh well, let's at least watch this AI. And when you see, and then you watch the play by play of how it's created and what it done, from a workflow point of view, post, all of that, I can see where that's helping. But it's amazing what it can create, and it is scary what it is creating. I just, I do feel like there's always going to be a need for a human touch to a story,
Yeah,
or a human aspect to it. But when you see what it's pulling off, you're like, oof,
I know.
it's getting there.
Well, I think our civilization has a lot has been at fault. Another one of those words I learned, another leadership. I'm going to tell you one of the most I heard sustainable growth when I was in Tribune executive training. And I looked around and I went, well, of course. I mean, we knew this was coming. We knew the world was going to be automated before you and I were born. We knew that, and we didn't make any concessions. We didn't think about, I mean, right now they would call it socialism or communism. You know, there's going to be people out there that eh, they're not going to have a job. They're
No,
just not going to have a job. And it's not because they're lazy. It's not because they're stupid. It's just there's not enough jobs
no.
for the population.
When I look at LA right now and when I see what's going on, it, it I don't see how anything that could ever come back could sustain the amount of people here that are looking for work.
Yeah,
Like
it's not going to, it's
I
calling.
can't see it. And there was some other places too that people had brought up for entertainment, like Atlanta, Vegas, even Nashville, all of these other places going. But when you deep dive into these economies and you deep dive into these areas, they're not doing all that much better right now. You know,
I'm no expert, but I know that the percentages that LA Film just came out with at 63% occupancy, that can't even be close.
it
I
can't even
don't,
be, not even in the ballpark.
yeah.
There's
And
no way.
in Atlanta, they're talking numbers around 30%. So, that means closer to 20. I was in Atlanta a little over a year ago checking it out for the Shreveport gig. I wanted to see how they did it in the
Yeah.
Southeast. So I went to a bunch of stages. I went to a couple of stages that will remain nameless that had been ready to use for 8 months and hadn't had a client yet. Not one client. I don't know how they do it.
Yeah.
I just don't know how they do it.
It's it's
There is good news. Um, the incentives kick in as I believe again. I haven't done my due diligence yet. I have to do it, but I believe they kick in on January 1, 2026. I think New York doubled theirs to 800 million, and we went from 300 to 750 million. I think that could help. I
I'm
think
hoping.
that could help. But it's calling of the herd. It is
Yeah.
absolutely calling of the herd, Aaron.
Yeah.
There's so many people and younger than me, but in the 50s and 60s that are done. I went out I take executives in charge out to lunch at least once a week, and they're not working. They're not
I
working.
I haven't seen, like, I always, as a freelance crew member, I always had unemployment times, not many, like a week or so here. I was always able to jump. Um, uh, but I never saw many of my network executive friends. I didn't have any of those ever really out of work. They would bounce, they would go here, go there. I don't know of anybody right now who is a
Yep.
friend of mine who's a network executive that's working in
Yep.
LA.
Yep.
Not one. They're
Yep.
all let go. I've got friends that are still back in New York. I've got friends that have been, executives, for lack of a better term, at production companies for a little while. But as far as the people that I knew working at the actual cable companies, things gone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tons of
It's,
them.
yeah. Yeah. It's a very hard world to be in. Especially if you don't keep up with that technology and you don't keep up with how this content, or how they're starting to deliver this content to the rest of
Yeah.
the world now, you
Well,
know?
there also I've seen a couple of major reality unscripted companies have really gotten rid of a lot of their top dollar guys.
Oh,
Yeah, and
all of
it's
them.
yeah,
All of them. I had friends working, I won't say the name of the company, but I had friends, two of them. One been there 27 years, one was there 22 years. And as of June 27th, both gone.
Yeah.
Like,
Um,
you know,
I I had a friend. I'll only mention one name. I won't mention his name. But I had a friend who was working CBS Viacom, and he was in the syndicated department, and he was doing everything. He was doing the budgets. He was line producing. He was doing everything. He was really very, very handy. And because of cost containment, and this was a while ago, I won't tell you when, but it's sometime in the last 20 years, they let him go. And he was probably making at most 175, maybe 225. They let him go. Within 2 weeks, they announced Leslie Moonves' bonus, $51 million. And I thought to myself, okay, what is 50 million, minus 200 and minus 250, $250,000 from that? It's nothing. It's
yeah,
absolutely nothing. It
yeah,
has corporate greed has it really the scales have been tipped. And I
it
don't want
really
to shit
has.
where I eat, but yeah, there's when I started working in in the production executive for Tribune, I was 3 or 4 clicks away from the boss. In other words, I click once, my boss comes up. I click twice. So, and I was probably 3 or 4 clicks away. By the time I was done, I was 1 click away. When I started, I made almost half of what he made. When I finished, he was making 10 times as much as me. So that's from 1996 until 2008.
Yeah. That's
There it is.
and that's where I don't think people, again, you and I, sometimes we have a little bit more, we're a little bit more privy to things because of the access we have to budgets, and having to do them, the contracts, knowing all aspects of it. Cause again, we're tracking money. So even sometimes with money that other people don't see, we see how it's going. And you and I both know, like, you're in a situation where they're getting out of the season, it's never coming from the production company or anybody else. It's always coming from what you have to create the show
Yep.
as these budgets shrink. And for me, where that became an issue, we all understand sometimes you got to rally together, you got to get going. Where it became an issue for me is when, in my opinion, it started affecting safety. Like if it's one thing if you're on a stage show, we're cutting back, and you know what, we're going to have this. We can only be here for 8 hours, not 12. We got to do certain things. But when you go, okay, we're going to go in the field, but we can't bring a medic. It's like, ooh, yeah, I
No.
gotta,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
gotta step out of that one.
Well, I was lucky with Who's Line because again, it does come down to trust. These guys did not produce in LA, and I was lucky enough to be able to, again, a lot's got to do. My business manager, who was my production accountant, we found the money to do all of that. We never thought about not having a medic. We never thought about not doing safety meetings. It was this. I was a key grip. I was a local 80 grip.
Oh,
And yeah, so and that was all about safety.
yeah.
That was all about safety. And I worked in the grids. I worked in grids when you didn't have to have harnesses. I would literally walked across grids without harnesses. Oh yeah. Early 80s. Oh yeah. Crazy stuff. And
I had
and
I had I was on an independent film in New York, and I had a gaffer tying into this rusted, horrible box,
yeah,
tied
yeah.
in, and he made me hold a 2x4. And he goes, if I stop talking, hit me as hard as you can because I froze up.
Yeah, yeah,
And he
yeah,
sat there like
yeah.
doing it, and he kept talking, and you're like, I was like, okay, but he goes,
That's
if I
funny.
freeze up, you got to nail me with this thing. I'm like, all right, filmmaking, all right.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why
Was your stuff mostly in feature?
mine, no. I came up in feature back in the day. I came up like 35 millimeter film in New York City.
Mhm.
And then when I came out to LA, I got picked up with 44 Blue, Rasha Drakovic and all that. And I
I know
really,
these people.
yeah, Rasha's my favorite dude ever. He and I got a really good reputation of not taking any crap in the prisons, and doing the prison shows and kind of going in. So, Rasha, funny enough, me and Rasha go to a jail over in West Hollywood, and we're going to do a scout for a show. And me and Rasha, they're talking to somebody, and all we hear over to the side is some guy in a big yellow jumpsuit, and he goes, "Aaron?" like this. And Rasha looks at me and he goes, and this guy comes over to hug me and all the alarms go off. They're like, you can't touch a prisoner, my man, like this. And Rasha's like, first producer that ever knew somebody in jail. I'm like, sorry.
How did he know you?
I knew him from playing cards down at the Bike Casino.
It's hilarious. That's funny.
He was in there on fraud.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
But
I'm looking up something right now because I had so much stuff with 44 Blue.
Oh, that's awesome.
Tons of stuff. I'm just gonna punch in 44 Blue, see what comes up.
They were so much fun. That's Rasha and Stephanie Drakovich.
Yeah.
And they did like you run into a lot of people in this business beyond the network and beyond even the people that you go, they're nice people and things, but you don't meet a lot of genuine people. It's really hard to meet somebody that you can go, wow, that's somebody that cares, because a lot of times they'll get trampled over or taken advantage of. I've never met owners like Rasha and Stephanie who really cared about not only the content. I've seen them turn down shows that you were like, wow, that's easy money. They did that based on principle, and I've never seen it before, and I've never seen it since.
Yeah.
Do
you know Ellen Raphael?
Ellen Raphael was the other line producer there. She would do their good stuff. Like I would get like this stuff where people were like, shanking each other and like, going, she would be you put Ellen in a room because Ellen knew how to send an email. Ellen knew how to talk to somebody. Ellen had that next level line producing skill where you needed somebody to calm people down, not to calm down somebody for having a gerbil.
I know. I've always said line producers, if they're running around on shoot days, in the world I'm in, they've done something wrong.
Yeah.
Again, I was the best thing about Whose Line Is It Anyway is I could sit in the audience. I did what I wanted while the show was on because everything was in order. I was there to put out fires. And after doing it for 9 years, there's not going to be any fires. I mean, and we had some, but we're completely prepared for them.
Yeah.
Completely prepared for them.
Yeah.
I did a show with her called What Should You Do?
What Should You Do?
Yeah.
And that's in the case of an emergency?
I don't know. That's the name of it's my only notes. This was before I was really kind of good at making notes. But I could tell you this was in, oh my goodness, this is probably 1990.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. I was with them the early 2000s. Yeah.
It could have been that. Wait a minute. Yeah, it could have been that too. Because again, I forgot.
Yeah. Rasha went all the way back. He started off doing those Bob Uecker sports bloopers.
Yep.
So much fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's another guy too. Like we've had a lot of people and you really come across with this as well. You enjoy what you do. You're having fun. You're talking, but Rasha is one of those guys that is genuinely having fun every day he's on set. Like, owners show up and people that own a production company, we could probably name 10 between each of us where the owner comes on and you can just feel that dread, or you can feel everybody's on edge, and they're just, Rasha shows up and everybody just breathes a sigh of relief. You're just like, oh, he's over there grabbing donuts, he's stuff. But it's a great feeling to be able to have an owner that can do that.
It reminds me of a story about, do you know who Vin DeBona is?
I've heard of Vin DeBona, yes.
America's Funniest Home Videos?
Yeah.
Okay. So Vin was a PA, and the guy that hired me at Hollywood Center way back when got him different interviews. Vin, his wife went to, he was working, and his wife went to Japan, and she came back with a videotape of Funniest Videos. And that's how the show was created. Damn. And I got to know him quite well because he produced a really bad television show for Tribune. And we were just talking, and I said, Vin, what's it take? And he said, one idea. He had He would readily admit that he's had one good idea in his entire life, and he's still the show still runs. He's directing it
Great
because he
example of
can.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah. Great example of that would be like also like that guy Langley that did Cops.
that's right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, and that I don't think people fully even understand how that show even changed how we're allowed to shoot reality television.
That's right.
Like that came out before there was any they used to just run up into people's homes like with their
Yeah, yeah,
cameras,
yeah,
start
yeah.
shooting. It's like now it's like you need a location release. You can't just barge into people's homes as a television camera. And
I know the guy that used to run syndicated for Paramount, syndicated for 20th. His name is Greg Midell.
uh,
You've heard the name Greg Midell.
yeah, yeah,
Okay. Greg has got one project, Cops. He's doing all the marketing. He's doing everything. He said it's the best job he's ever had.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Still going.
Still going. Back in the day, even if it was a long running television show, you know, it's you still very few of them were getting 7 or 8 seasons. You know what I mean? So, you know, you did more shows, you bounced around a little bit more. Some of these reality shows, there have been people that's been their entire career.
And you know, that goes to one of the original questions about the state of the business.
Yeah.
We're in a world now where I'll do a budget or a pro forma or a projection for a studio based on episodic, based on unscripted, based on those things. And 5 years ago, you could have two stages taken up for an entire year by two episodic. So you do the math there. Not anymore. Episodics aren't doing 15 to 20 episodes anymore. In fact, they're doing as little as 6.
Yeah.
And, and
Yeah.
you can't, like you said, where's it going to go? You can't build a business on that, especially when not only have they reduced the number of episodes they're doing, they're reducing the number of projects they're doing. So mind you, if you exchanged a 15 with 3 sixes, you're fine. But they're not
Yeah.
doing that. They're not doing that. And it's because above the line is still gets all of their raises. The progression of an episodic show is the first year there's 1 or 2 people who are stars and making a decent amount of money, and then there's the rest of the cast. Well, after year 2, the rest of the cast they start getting their bumps, and it just kills below the line.
Oh,
Below the line, it just kills you because
they
all of a
don't.
sudden they're saying, can't we get rid of 2 electricians? I mean, it's like, oh, for God's sake, 2 electricians, but $1,000 a day? You can't. Oh, come on,
Yeah. One
that
of
doesn't
the
make sense.
Nope. I one of the worst notes I ever got. It was. I'm going to be honest. It ended up being probably my last week at a network. But it was I was flown out to New York to a big, huge television show, massive A-list Oscar-winning director. 6 episodes they're going to be doing. It's $20 million for 6 episodes of this
No,
massive,
yeah.
massive
That's that.
thing.
What year? Can I ask?
2014, right?
That's a little
It
low,
was,
isn't
it
it?
was, it was, but it was big for what it was going to be.
Okay.
But it was, and again, there was no name actors in it. There was going to be, lesser known people. That was kind of the basis of it. But the people at the network were like, we got to save money in all these different places and blah, 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 because there was so much in the above the line. It was astronomical how much was in above the line. So they come to me and you're talking about a director of photography that is working with a director. And again, the director is obviously is Judy, but this director has been nominated for at least 5 or 6 Oscars. They've the
Yeah,
biggest
yeah.
movies ever made, right? And they want me to go back and tell them to knock $500 a day off of the DP rate on a $20 million budget. Tell Brady, I was like, do you understand that if I do that, they'll all crucify me? They'll
Yeah,
think
yeah.
I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
And I just remember, and I refused to do it. It was one of the last things that I did at a network. I was like, yeah, this isn't for me. I can't. And I understand the need to make those phone calls from their point of view and do it. But I was just like, I'm not the guy. I got to be back over here.
Well, it's funny because that's horrible leadership.
It was brutal.
When I had to tell one of the companies that I wouldn't go after anybody specific, I would say something to the extent of, "I need $1,000. I need $20,000. This is what I need."
You
When we
tell me
did
how we're going to get there.
Earth Final Conflict, we did it with maybe Lionsgate in Vancouver, maybe Toronto, whatever. The dollar was good. This was early 2000s. This was before it was really runaway production. But we ended up going into season 2, and we were tasked with saving, literally, the budget was only 1.1 per episode. That's it. That's nothing. And it was syndicated, but we were told that we needed to save somewhere between $20,000 and $25,000. So we basically introduced HD. We gave them HD cameras. We changed it all around. Now, mind you, didn't save a penny the first year because the people who used it it was Vancouver. The people who used it in Vancouver didn't know what to do. They were not HD guys, nor was I, but I had engineers there. And then by, I'm going to say year 3 or year 4, it started to show. They started to realize, oh, we don't need coloring. We don't need these kind of things. All we need to do is switch it to that. Again, my knowledge of this type of stuff, it's not very good, but I was at the head of it. So, and yeah, it goes back to what we were saying about sustainable growth. All of these new items that they're doing are great, but we've got to think, how does it affect 4 levels below where you're going? And we don't do that. We don't think about that at all. There's a lot of very, very good, talented professionals out there that haven't worked in 2 years.
At
And
least.
yeah, and somebody should have thought, somebody should have, we should have, what were we thinking?
Right. George, it was amazing. Thank you
Okay,
again.
we've done it twice. You're
I
not going to
know.
get a third time. Yeah, yeah, yeah.